A Watchtower helper just gave a talk about aging gracefully, but the organization he represents, they promised you'd never have to. If you're one of those older ones sitting in a Kingdom Hall right now, watching your savings run out, wondering how you'll afford retirement after decades of keeping it simple, this video is for you. By the end, you'll understand exactly why you're in this position, and it's not your fault. Or if you have a friend or a relative in that situation because of the Watchtower, this video is for you. It will help you understand what they're going through and why. But here's what makes this especially painful. The very organization that put you here is now telling you how to cope with where they left you. Let's start with who's speaking. Robert Steranko is a helper to the writing committee at Watchtower headquarters. That means he helps craft the very publications that have shaped your life decisions for decades.
Today's text leaves no doubt that Jehovah holds elderly ones in high regard. After all, the text says, before gray hair you should rise up, and you must show honor to an older man.
Honor. That's a powerful word. But what does honoring older ones actually look like? Does it look like telling young people in 1969 that they would never grow old in this present system of things? Does it look like discouraging entire generations from getting college educations, building careers, or saving for retirement? According to Pew Research, Jehovah's Witnesses have the lowest average household income of any religious group in the United States. Nearly half of all witness households earn less than $30,000 per year. Only 9% have undergraduate degrees, the lowest of any faith group studied. That's not an accident. That's a policy outcome.
And Jehovah truly loves those who have grown old in his service. Oh, they may suffer the pains and limitations of advancing age, some more so than others, but we appreciate their faithful service as they continue to radiate the joy of Jehovah.
They may suffer the pains and limitations of advanced age. Let's talk about what those limitations actually include for many faithful witnesses. If you're feeling a knot in your stomach right now, that's important. You're not being disloyal for noticing the gap between what was promised and what was delivered. You're just being honest. Many older witnesses today are facing retirement without adequate savings. Why? Because they were explicitly told not to plan for a future that wouldn't come. The May 22, 1969 Awake magazine stated plainly, if you are a young person, you also need to face the fact that you will never grow old in this present system of things. Why not? Because all the evidence and fulfillment of Bible prophecy indicates that this corrupt system is due to end in a few years. Therefore, as a young person, you will never fulfill any career this system offers. That was 56 years ago. Everyone who read that as a teenager is now in their 70s, if they're still alive.
Likely you remember the article in the June 1st, 2015 Watchtower, How to Age Gracefully. The opening paragraph asks, how do you feel when the thought of aging comes up? It fills many with concern, anxiety, and even dread. This is because aging is usually associated with negatives, such as diminished looks, a frail body, memory loss, and chronic diseases.
Notice what's missing from that list. Financial insecurity. The dread of aging isn't just about physical decline. For many witnesses, it's about looking at a bank account that reflects decades of keeping kingdom interests first, while the organization they served accumulated billions in real estate. The 1969 Kingdom Ministry told witnesses, in view of the short time left, a decision to pursue a career in this system of things is not only unwise, but extremely dangerous. The March 1969 Watchtower warned young people not to let school counselors brainwash them with the devil's propaganda to get ahead, to make something of yourself in this world. Make something of yourself. That's what they called planning for your future. The devil's propaganda.
Regarding all that, 2 years ago, the Watchtower stated, we need not try too hard to erase all signs of aging. Those signs can be evidence of maturity, dignity, and inner beauty. And as was already said this morning, Proverbs 16:31 says, gray-headedness is a crown of beauty when it is found in the way of righteousness.
Gray-headedness is a crown of beauty. But it wasn't supposed to happen at all, was it? Here's where it gets complicated. The organization has been predicting the imminent end since its founding, 1914, 1925, 1975, and others. Each time, people made life-altering decisions based on those predictions, and each time when the dates passed, the organization blamed the members for running ahead. The July 1976 Watchtower actually stated that some witnesses planned their lives according to a mistaken view of just what was to happen on a certain date. A mistaken view, as if the Watchtower itself hadn't published that view repeatedly. In 1974, the Kingdom Ministry praised those who were selling their homes and property and planning to finish out the rest of their days in this old system in the pioneer service. It called this a fine way to spend the short time remaining before the wicked world's end. Those people didn't have mistaken views. They were following explicit organizational direction.
And that is certainly how Jehovah views us, the Watchtower said, and we should try to view ourselves as he does. Some years before that, another article stated, if advancing age hinders you from accomplishing as much as you would like in Christian activity, do not despair. Remember, the value of a Christian is gauged not by his level of activity, but by his faith and depth of love, and by serving Jehovah to the best of one's own ability. And yet, the hard fact of life is that right now we are all experiencing the aging process.
The hard fact of life. But who made that fact so much harder than it needed to be? You're not paranoid for connecting these dots. The pattern is documented in their own publications that are being quietly removed from the online library while new members are told the organization never predicted specific dates. It's my personal opinion that the 1975 fiasco is the reason why the Watchtower does not have any Awake magazine prior to 1970 on their website. That's just my opinion. I don't know that for a fact.
The older we get, the more we become aware of that. All of us, whether young or old, should give thought to what Moses prayed about in Psalm 90. So let's turn there to Psalm 90 and keep our Bibles open for a few verses. We start with some phrases in verse 9. He prayed, our days ebb away, our years come to an end like a whisper. Verse 10, the span of our life is 70 years, or 80 if one is especially strong. But they are filled with trouble and sorrow. They quickly pass by, and away we fly.
Moses wrote about a 70 or 80-year lifespan. The organization's own publications contradicted this directly when they told young people in 1969 that they would never complete a career, that the system would be gone within years. If the Watchtower believed in 1969 that young people wouldn't see their 30s in this system, why are they now quoting Moses about expecting 70 or 80 years? Let me stop here. This isn't ancient history. If you were 20 in 1969, you're 76 now. If you followed that Awake article's advice, you spent your prime earning years preaching a false prophecy rather than getting an education and a good job. That's not your fault. You did what you believed was right at the time. The fault is entirely Watchtower's, and they have no right to try and appease you now.
My dear father died faithful at the age of 91. A few years before that, his doctor told him he had a lot of things wrong with him and none of them could be fixed. So my father would often say, old age is not for sissies. Well, the effects of aging can certainly make life more difficult, less enjoyable, and even frightening. How meaningful, then, are Moses' next words in verse 12? Teach us how to count our days so that we may acquire a heart of wisdom. What does it mean to count our days? Well, it surely means more than just checking them off on a jail cell wall. Nor does it mean that we should become obsessed with how long we might live.
We shouldn't become obsessed with how long we might live. But the organization was literally obsessed with that for decades. the March 1968 Kingdom Ministry told witnesses, "Just think, brothers, there are only about 90 months left before 6,000 years of man's existence on earth is completed. Do you remember what we learned at the assemblies last summer? The majority of people living today will probably be alive when Armageddon breaks out." 90 months. That's very specific. That's not wisely counting your days. That's a countdown clock.
No, like Moses, we need to pray that Jehovah will teach us to value our days as a very precious resource, that we use our days in a worthwhile way that brings honor to Jehovah.
Use our days in a worthwhile way. The organization defined worthwhile very specifically: pioneering, Bethel service, Kingdom Hall construction, not education, not career building, not retirement planning. Preaching about an end that never came, an end which they now seem to believe isn't coming at all, as you'll see shortly. Regarding college, the October 2005 Watchtower asked parents, "Is the risk involved worth whatever benefit the young ones may receive?" The June 2019 Watchtower claimed that education generates pride and arrogance. Of course, they reversed that last year and said higher education is okay after decades of demonizing it. So all the brothers and sisters who wanted to go to college didn't, leaving them where exactly? Now, I'm not saying college is right for everyone, but that's a decision that should have been made by the individual, not by the Watchtower. What does this actually mean for someone who lived it? It means sitting at 75 years old, watching your worldly coworker retire comfortably while you calculate whether Social Security will cover both rent and medication this month. That's what it means.
So regardless of our age, if we live each day so as to have Jehovah's approval and make his heart glad, then we can continue to pray as Moses did in verse 14. "Satisfy us with your loyal love in the morning so that we may shout joyfully, and rejoice during all our days."
Rejoice during all your days. Beautiful sentiment. But many older witnesses are struggling to rejoice while dealing with the practical consequences of organizational policy. The Pew Forum survey found that Jehovah's Witnesses have the highest turnover rate of any American religion. About 2/3 of people raised as witnesses eventually leave. Many who stay are older members who made irreversible life decisions decades ago. Look, if you need to pause this video, that's okay. What we're discussing here isn't comfortable, but recognizing the pattern isn't betrayal. It's the first step toward understanding why you feel the way you do. The NPR report on Jehovah's Witnesses in education interviewed over 100 former members. Their stories follow the same pattern. Zachary Linderer grew up on Long Island, homeschooled his whole life, obsessed with science. He wanted to study physics or oceanography in college, but his father told him he knew people who were into science, and it dragged him right out of the organization, right out of the truth. So Zachary never went. His parents wouldn't support it. Amber McGee grew up a witness in rural Texas, also homeschooled. She described her mother as not capable of teaching 3 young children alone, either emotionally or mentally. But the priority was protecting the kids from worldly influences, not preparing them for futures in this system. Both of them, like so many others, said the same thing. They felt shortchanged, not because they made bad decisions, but because the decisions were made for them before they were even old enough to understand the cost. Maybe you're remembering something right now. A conversation with a parent who discouraged your education, a talk in an assembly that made you feel guilty for thinking about career advancement, that moment when you realized your non-witness coworkers had retirement accounts and you didn't even know what a 401k was. That wasn't your failure to plan. You were following a plan, just not one designed for a future that actually came.
Solomon also expressed wisdom about this matter. If you turn to Ecclesiastes, the 12th chapter, the first verse is very familiar to us, the second not so much. Ecclesiastes 12:1. "Remember then your grand Creator of the days in the days of your youth, before the days of distress come and the years arrive when you will say, I have no pleasure in them."
Remember your Creator in the days of your youth. The organization interpreted this to mean, give your youth to us. Don't waste it on worldly pursuits like education or financial planning.
Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars grow dark, and the clouds return after the downpour. In verse 2, Solomon likens the days of youth to the Palestinian summer, when sun, moon, and stars shine from a cloudless sky and things look very bright.
Solomon talked about enjoying your youth, but the organization specifically targeted young people with messages designed to redirect that youth toward organizational service, unpaid service. The 1992 Watchtower stated, "This magazine has placed emphasis on the dangers of higher learning, and justifiably so, for much higher education opposes the healthful teaching of the Bible. The faithful and discreet slave has strongly discouraged entering that kind of environment." The result? According to NPR's 2017 analysis of Pew data, Jehovah's Witnesses had the lowest rate of formal education of any faith group studied. The educational gap translates directly into the income gap. Look, this isn't about blaming your parents. They were following organizational direction. They believed it was true. The question is, why was that direction given when the organization itself sends witnesses through university to become their lawyers, accountants, and medical professionals at Bethel? Why did the Watchtower amass billions in real estate and plan for its future while telling you not to plan for yours?
And there's no better time to think seriously about the Creator than when a person is in the summertime of his life, in his prime, when he can really give his very best in Jehovah's service. However, that ability wanes during the days of distress, of old age, when the body is weak and ailing, and then a person's days are like the cold, rainy season of winter, with one downpour of trouble after another.
Give your very best in your prime. But what happens after you've given those prime years? What happens when the winter comes and you don't have resources to weather it? In 2016, Pew Research found that Jehovah's Witnesses had the lowest average household income among all religious groups surveyed. Only 4% of witness households earned over $100,000 annually. The 1975 Watchtower article, How to Make Retirement Rewarding, did acknowledge retirement planning, but framed it within the context of increased theocratic service. It praised pioneers over 65 and implied that the proper response to retirement wasn't rest, but more organizational activity. Meanwhile, the 1974's Kingdom Ministry praised those selling homes to Pioneer because the short time remaining made it a fine way to spend their resources. For those who followed that advice and survived the past 50 years, what resources remain? This isn't about money for money's sake. Financial security in old age means being able to afford medication. It means not choosing between food and rent. It means not being a burden on already stretched family members.
Some say they wish they could live their life backward. But what would that be like? Well, one person explained it this way: get old age out of the way at the start. Spending the first few years in an old age home and being evicted when you're too young and well, then receive a gold watch and begin your years of secular work. Work 40 years until you're young enough to enjoy retirement. Then go to school, slowly turning into a playful child with no responsibilities, eventually turning into a little baby and finishing off as a gleam in someone's eye. What a preposterous notion.
Saranko calls living life backward a preposterous notion. But what's truly preposterous is telling people the system will end within years, discouraging them from preparing for a future, and then 50 years later, telling them how to cope with getting old in a system that you said wouldn't exist anymore.
Or is it? Not totally. Look at Job 33, verse 25. Job 33, 25. The Bible promises that in the new world, the aging process will, in effect, reverse. For it says, let his flesh become fresher or healthier than in youth. Let him return to the days of his youthful vigor.
The New World promise. It's the promise that justified every sacrifice. Don't get an education. The new world is coming. Don't build a career. The new world is coming. Don't save for retirement. You'll never need it. The 1938 Watchtower urged witnesses not to marry and have children because of the urgency of the witnessing work back then. That was 87 years ago. The 1987 District Convention included a talk called Responsible Childbearing in This Time of the End that encouraged married couples to remain childless because of the nearness of Armageddon.
Ahead of us is a great tribulation such as has not occurred since the world's beginning until now. No, nor will occur again. It will be a difficult time for adults and children alike. In his prophecy on the conclusion of the present system of things, Jesus foretold that Christian truth would divide families. He stated in Mark 13:12 reads, "Furthermore, your mother will deliver brother over to death, and a father a child, and children will rise up against parents and have them put to death." Obviously, rearing children in the time of the end would not always be a pure joy. It could bring heartaches, disappointment, and even danger, as Jesus' words just quoted show.
How many people followed that advice? How many are now elderly, childless, without family support, not because they didn't want children, but because they trusted they'd have them in paradise instead? Is the Watchtower going to make up for the shortfall from them not having kids to take care of them? Of course not. The Watchtower doesn't pay a dime in charity to its members that fall on hard financial times. Look, I know this is heavy, but understanding what happened isn't about anger. It's about releasing yourself from the guilt of consequences you didn't cause. You made the best decisions you could with the information you were given.
And for those who are never going to die, they will return to the days of their youth, though not all the way back to the crib, but back to the prime of adulthood, when we will have a strong, perfectly healthy body to complement a sound mind full of knowledge, wisdom, and experience, and who would not want to enjoy that?
Those who are never going to die. That phrase carries the weight of over a century of promises, but notice the subtle hint there. Some people are never going to die, but the person Steranko is talking to, yeah, you're not one of them. He didn't say they wouldn't die, just that there will be those who are never going to die. That's the tell. That's how you know Watchtower doesn't believe the end is coming anymore. They're just keeping the gravy train rolling for as long as they can. That's my opinion anyway. Let me know yours in the comments. The 1969 Awake told young people they would never grow old in this present system. Those young people are now in nursing homes, if they can afford them, and most of them can't. The Watchtower Society built Bessarim in 1929 as a house for the princes of old, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who were expected to return before Armageddon. They sold it quietly in 1948, 20 years later. The organization has always had long-term plans. Buildings, legal departments, investment portfolios, real estate worth billions. They planned for a future while telling the rank and file not to.
Well, none of us are so old now that we cannot hope to live to see that day come soon. The article, How to Age Gracefully, states, whether confronted with age-related problems or not, most people wish to be able to age gracefully. How can this be done? In part, doing so depends on our attitude and our willingness and ability to adapt to this new phase of life.
Adapt to this new phase of life. This is the phase that wasn't supposed to come, and now adaptation means coping with limited resources, failing health, and the emotional weight of realizing decades of sacrifice were based on predictions that didn't materialize. False prophecy, let's call it what it is. The 1980 Watchtower acknowledged that some members had planned their lives according to a mistaken view of 1975. But the March 1980 Watchtower also admitted the Watchtower included all disappointed ones of Jehovah's Witnesses, hence including persons having to do with the publication of the information that contributed to the buildup of hope centered on that date. They admitted that the people who wrote all that stuff contributed to the false hopes, though they did try to sidestep a bit by saying that those people were also disappointed when it didn't happen. How nice, a bit of acknowledgement from the Watchtower, but they never compensated those who lost the most, and they never will.
And one simple and practical principle the article highlights is to be positive. It says, as you age, you may experience negative feelings when you remember your youthful vigor and the many things you were once able to do. This is understandable. However, make an effort not to be overcome by those negative feelings.
Don't be overcome by negative feelings. But those feelings exist for a reason. Grief is appropriate when you've lost something, and many older witnesses have lost futures they could have had.
Dwelling on the past can make your days gloomy and discourage you from doing what you are still able to do. So with the right attitude, it is possible to age gracefully.
Dwelling on the past. This phrase appears again and again in Watchtower literature about failed prophecies. Don't look back. Don't examine what happened. Just adjust your attitude and move forward. But dwelling on the past isn't the problem. Understanding the past is how we make sense of the present and prevent repeating mistakes. Mistakes like listening to the Watchtower.
Right now, we cannot live our life backward. We can live it forward, eventually on into the endless future when we will turn out to be a real gleam in someone's eye, Jehovah's. Why? Because he will know that we remembered him, our grand creator.
You're not spiritually weak for recognizing what happened. You're not faithless for grieving what you lost. You made real sacrifices based on promises that weren't kept. That's not your failure, that's theirs, and you're allowed to acknowledge it. Look, Robert Steranko might be a sincere man giving a sincere talk. He might really have faith in the Watchtower, I don't know. But the organization he represents owes its older members more than platitudes about aging gracefully. It owes accountability for decades of telling people not to prepare for futures that came anyway. It owes honesty about predictions that shaped and limited millions of lives. And at the very least, it owes an acknowledgement that many faithful older ones aren't struggling with aging. They're struggling with the aftermath of organizational policy, their policy. If you're an older witness watching this, I want you to know something. You did your best with what you were told. The decisions you made were made in good faith, and recognizing the truth about what happened doesn't erase the sincerity of your service. If you're a younger witness, consider this. The organization recently softened its stance on higher education. In 2025, they announced that whether to obtain additional education or not is a matter for personal decision. That's a significant change from calling college spiritually dangerous and the devil's propaganda. Why the change now? Maybe because they're seeing the consequences in their aging membership, though I doubt that has anything to do with it. Maybe because there's not enough money coming in anymore through donations, or they need educated people to help run their headquarters and fight their lawsuits. Regardless, for those who already made their choices decades ago, the softening comes too late. The question isn't whether Jehovah loves older ones. The question is whether the organization that claims to speak for him has served them faithfully. Based on the documented record of failed predictions, educational discouragement, and financial policies that left faithful members unprepared for the futures they weren't supposed to have, the answer is no. No, they did not serve them faithfully. You deserve to examine that record for yourself, not because examining it makes you disloyal, but because honoring older ones includes being honest with them about what was done in their name. Well, now that you understand the pattern with education and retirement, you need to understand how all this came to be. What drove the constant end times predictions despite their continuing prophetic failures? The answers might surprise you. If you haven't, check out my documentary, From Kooky to Cult, The History of Jehovah's Witnesses. Click the icon in the corner to watch that now. I'll see you there. I wanted to pause for a second to ask for your support by becoming a channel member of the channel by clicking the join button below. It starts at a whopping $4 a month. If that won't break the bank for you, it helps me be able to produce more content like this. If it would break the bank for you, by all means, just keep watching. Thank you in advance for your generous support.